Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 26, Text 3, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vikasa Swami Prabhupada. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Atafpada Kamalam Shri Guru Navaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shiva Shakhan Vitamscha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhupada has given one of his longer purports to this verse, which helps us in understanding the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in relationship to this material world. We are in material consciousness, and therefore it is difficult for us to understand the Personality of Godhead, who is Ishvaram Prakrite Param. He is the Supreme Controller beyond the material energy. The same is stated here, Nirguna Prakrite Paraha. And even many people who they can conceive that there is a supreme person or entity, supreme power beyond this material existence, they cannot understand how he is the supreme person, and therefore they conclude that, just like here it's mentioned Nirguna, they conclude that because the Supreme Lord cannot be affected, or the Supreme Absolute Truth cannot be affected by the material qualities. Therefore he is Nirguna, has no qualities at all. But Nirguna must be understood to mean that he is not affected by the material qualities. Otherwise, they come up with philosophical impossibilities. But the general conception of God is as a philosophical impossibility. The Nirvisheshvadis, which we generally call mayavadis, they accept that there is reality, there is dravya, there is substance, but they say it is nirguna. Reality has no qualities, and therefore everything here is not reality, because it is perceived as having qualities. And the Buddhists, they have an even more strange theory, that there is no dravya, there is no substance whatsoever, nothing exists, but there is guna. You want me to explain that? Well, I can't. You better ask a Buddhist. It's pretty difficult to understand. Nothing has qualities. You're looking confused. Well, I'm also confused. I remember many years ago, the first section of Chaitanya Charitamrita that Prabhupada published was chapter 7 of Adi Lila, Lord Chaitanya in 5 features, which has some description of the mayavadi philosophy in the purports, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's rebuttal of that. So I was going through that when I was newly in the movement, and I was asking senior devotee, what's this all about? I can't follow it, and I can't understand it. And he said that, well, a devotee said to Prabhupada that, Prabhupada, I can't understand this mayavadi philosophy. Prabhupada said, that's good. If you can understand it, you'll be in trouble. It doesn't make any sense. But it seems to make sense. I mean, they have the Mayavadis, beginning with the Mayavadi Acharya, Shankaracharya, has made a huge body of literature, so much philosophy, to describe how everything is an illusion. So they've made so much description. And the Buddhists also, they have so much philosophy in Buddhism to describe how everything is nothing. And they'll fight amongst themselves, the Buddhists, that nothing is like this, no, it's like that. It's all nothing, but it's nothing like, it's this kind of nothing, and not that kind of nothing. So if we engage in actually, where's the philosophical discussion? Who is there to discuss all these things nowadays? But if we take away all the fancy terms they use and all the complex philosophical discussions, we'll find that actually what the Mayavadis are saying is all nonsense. And some of our Vaishnava acharyas, they did that. Vadiraja in particular, he reduced all the Mayavadi arguments to their bare essentials and showed that they're ridiculous. And Prabhupada and all the Vaishnava acharyas since that time have been using these arguments, just like to say that, well, if you say that the jiva is the absolute truth, then how come he's in Maya? Then Maya is greater than the absolute truth. Or if everything is one, then how is there Maya? Or if you say that the jiva by knowledge becomes liberated, but then they're all one, so all should become liberated all at once. Prabhupada, he used to use words like nonsense, which is actually, they don't deserve so much discussion. So you can just take it all and throw it in the trash bin. You ever do that? You go in people's houses and you see books by all these different swamis, and they're very respectful, and you say, "You'd like me to do something to bless your family?" "Yes, Swamiji. You want whatever it is you want to object?" "No, no." And then you take all their Mayavadi books and say, "I'd like to take these books with me." And then you burn them. Or, best thing is to burn them and cook some chapatis on top. That way the Mayavadis can do some seva. Because you have to offer the chapati to Krishna. People, they are attracted. That Lord Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita, they are attracted to demoniac and atheistic views. Moghasha mogha karmano mogha jnana vichetasaha rakshasim asurim chaiva prakriting mohining shitaha. They are attracted, persons who are attracted to demoniac and atheistic views, they like it. They like to hear that we are all God. They don't stop to think that, well, if I'm God, why do I have to go out and work and to earn money and come home and then my wife is complaining, you're not bringing enough money, and it's all my Leela. They think like that. One of the most prominent mayavadis of the modern age was he was the first president of so-called independent India, and he wrote his commentary on Bhagavad Gita. He was famous as he wasn't a politician so much, he was well known as a philosopher. Just like the present president of India, he wasn't known as a public figure or a politician, he was known as a scientist and a philosopher of sorts. So Dr. Radhakrishnan was, oops, I said his name, anyway. He was known as a philosopher. So he gave all these, he wrote not only his commentary on Bhagavad Gita, but so many different books of philosophy. He wrote a history of Indian, big volumes, and all in mayavada. It means his idea, everything is all one. Prabhupada very strongly criticized his philosophical lucubrations. So their philosophy is that, well, we're here in Maya, but it's just, actually we're all Bhagavan and it's all our Leela. But he ended his life living like a vegetable, means he became senile and lost consciousness of what's going on. And Prabhupada went to visit him when Prabhupada visited Madras in the early 1970s, but he couldn't say anything. His consciousness had merged into the divine or non-divine stupidity. He'd lost, he was a very intelligent person, but he'd lost his intelligence and he couldn't recognize anyone. He'd become mentally decrepit. So this was the result of his claiming to be God. He was getting preparation for entering the species, the vegetable species of life. He was a philosopher, no doubt, but with a demoniac propensity. So the Bhagavatam here, Bhagavatam means it's the commentary of the Vedanta Sutra, which clearly, actually Vedanta Sutra is clear, but because our consciousness is unclear, if we read the Shastra, we don't find Krishna. Krishna is everywhere. But we don't see Krishna because our consciousness is not clear. Here in this verse, it's stated that the Supreme Lord can be perceived everywhere. We say, why don't we see Him? Because we are blind. Otherwise, we should be able to see Krishna everywhere. Krishna, in this verse, Prabhupada describes this Swayam Jyoti. He is self-effulgent, so whatever light we see, Prabhasmi Shashi Surya Yaho, the light of the sun and the moon, that is Krishna. We should be able to see Krishna everywhere and at all times. But we don't see Krishna because our consciousness is not clear. Otherwise, everything, in everything, we should be able to recognize Krishna's presence. Nowadays, people are very educated, but their education covers their seeing Krishna. Otherwise, a simple-minded person who people think is unintelligent, they can very easily understand. You explain that everything is the manifestation of God's energy. They can accept. But when you become educated, they explain differently that this energy is coming from that and the interaction of atoms and waves and molecules, and they think there's no need to see God. So the so-called less intelligent person who's more intelligent, then by seeing material nature he sees Krishna everywhere. And when you become so-called educated, then seeing material nature, you presume that there is no God anywhere. So this is the result of modern education, or atheistic education. By their great intelligence, they increase their foolishness. They start off with the premise that asatyam apratishtam te jagadahur anishwaram. There's no God in control. This is their premise. That there's no God in control. There's no basis of the universe. It just exists. And they think this is scientific because science means that we accept which we can perceive, which we can prove, and we didn't find God in our test tube yet. There's no evidence of any God. It's such fools. It's so stupid. And they give each other PhDs and Nobel Prizes. It's one donkey decorating another donkey, that's all. It's so foolish that we cannot see God, therefore He does. There's no scientific proof of it. You damn fool idiots. Of course you can't see Him, because He's not perceivable by any material means. If He was perceivable by material means, then He wouldn't be God, you fools. He said, well, we couldn't see Him. Of course you can't see Him. You never will see Him in your test tube or in your thinking and working out mathematically, trying to work out what's the origin of the creation. You'll never find Him. It's not possible. If you could find God by such a method, then He wouldn't be God, because by definition He is Ishvaram Prakrite Param. If He's subject to your test tubes and your Bunsen burners, then how is He God? But because they have the demoniac way of thinking that everything I should understand, everything I should be able to understand. Otherwise, we can't accept it. But what is our insignificance? This we should first try to understand. Before you study physics, we don't say stop. You study, but first, before studying physics, biology, chemistry, engineering, all these things, first of all study who are we, how insignificant we are. They should understand, astrophysicists, at least they should understand how tiny our position is in the universe, as Prabhupada points out here. The light of the sun reaches us from millions of, you see that there? You see this light of the sun shining on the floor? That comes from millions of miles away. We should consider how insignificant we are. But we're thinking, oh, I'm so important. And I have declared that there is no God, so there's no God. That's the proof, I said. So foolish. So this scientific knowledge, so-called scientific knowledge, is very prominent in the world today. I was saying Bhagavatam is commentary on Vedanta Sutra. So we may not recognize it, but the statements in here and in the purport that Prabhupada has given, they're actually following on from the thesis of Vedanta Sutra, because Vedanta Sutra is Vyasadev's establishing Vedyam Vastavamatra Vastu, the actual subject matter of the Vedas, in opposition to the various materialistic philosophers who have misinterpreted the Vedas. So there are different philosophers. There are persons who say that material nature is is eternal, there's no beginning and there's no end. And there are those who say that the whole material creation is just going on by the interaction of Purusha and Prakriti. And even though there is Ishvara, he is not Ishvara Prakriti Para. Ishvara is just some function. There are those who say that there is Ishvara, but Ishvara is also subject to Maya, mayavadis. That ultimately everything is without any qualities. There's only one. Ekam Brahma Dvitiya Nasti. There's only one supreme absolute truth, and there's nothing else in existence. This is a Vedic statement, but they misinterpret it. Ekam Brahma Dvitiya Nasti means that there's only one Supreme Lord and no other. But they take it to mean that there's only Brahma and there's nothing else. Nothing else exists. But there's 4 words right there. Ekam Brahma Dvitiya Na Asti. 5 words. So there's 5 words, but there's only one Supreme. And nothing else. Anyway, the philosophy stinks. So there were so many different philosophies. In the modern age, there is maybe more than at any other time in recent history, means in Kali Yuga. They don't know history before. Before that they say they were dinosaurs. But more than at any time, there's approaching a philosophical homogeneity or oneness. Means practically no one's interested in any philosophy anyway. But the prominent world view is that the scientific outlook, everything has come into being by chance. First of all, the universe came into being by chance, and then life came into being by chance, and then human beings came into being by chance. They give the example. We say, well, how can it come into being by chance? It's so complex. And they say, well, it's possible. If there's enough chances, anything can happen. They give the example that if you leave a bunch of monkeys in a room with a bunch of typewriters. You know what typewriters are? Before there were computers, there were typewriters. And of course the typewriters should be set up with paper inside them, and the typewriters should have ink. But by chance, if there's a bunch of typewriters in a room and it gets invaded by a bunch of monkeys and they jump around long enough, then in course of time they will type out all the works of Shakespeare without any spelling mistakes. This is the example given. This is science. Stop laughing. Well, if that's true, then there should also be a universe which is presided over by a giant green gorilla who every 3 seconds an egg comes out of his ear, and out of each egg comes a dinosaur who stands on his head. Right? If anything's possible by chance, then that should also be possible by chance. You can think of any nonsense thing, it should be possible by chance. If by the monkeys jumping over the typewriters this universe has come into being, then there should be another universe which is presided over by a big green gorilla who out of his ear every 3 seconds comes an egg, out of which comes a dinosaur that stands on its head, for instance, and any other damn stupid thing you can think of. If anything's possible by chance, then everything should be existing by chance. So we're not very impressed with this scientific example. We're impressed with Vyasadev's delineating the absolute truth, and we're impressed with Prabhupada presenting that. This morning I was listening to Prabhupada so many times is saying how we should show how these scientists, they're just bluffing and cheating. So I was thinking, this Life Comes from Life, this book is so wonderful. How Prabhupada in very clear language, very clearly, he points out all the fallacies of the so-called scientific hypothesis. Actually, at the present time, it's a major cultural issue in the Western world, especially in America, how semi-theistic, or to be more straightforward, Christian scientists, there are scientists who profess to be Christians, who they're putting forward that we should not teach, or if we're going to teach evolutionary theory in the schools, we should also teach what they call intelligent design theory, at least as a theory. They say that evolutionary theory has never been proved, and these are scientists who are saying this, that the creation is, or the very term, the creation, or the material cosmos, is so complex that it suggests that it couldn't come into being by chance, that there should be an intelligent designer. So it's a big issue in America, that it's come to the courts, different state supreme courts, and should it be allowed to be taught or not? And the scientific establishment is very much against it. No, we should only teach evolutionary theory. But more and more scientists are saying that, well, evolutionary theory, it doesn't hold. There are so many faults in it. And intelligent design is also a very, at least as a theory, it holds at least as much weight as evolutionary theory. So it's a big struggle is going on. We can see, actually, this is coming up. So many things are coming up in the world because of the distribution of Prabhupada's books. So it's quite likely that within the next generation or so,